March 1974, 29 years had passed since the end of World War II. The world was at peace, prosperity was everywhere on Earth. New cities were rising from the ground, people had forgotten the old wars, a new era had begun for almost everyone alive on Earth. But deep inside the dense and terrifying jungle of Lubang Island in the Philippines, one soldier was still fighting a war nobody remembered. His uniform was torn, his boots were worn to nothing, but his rifle and sword still shone. He had not stopped for a single day. This man was a Japanese Imperial Army officer. While the entire world moved forward, he remained locked inside a war only he could still see. His name was Hiroo Onoda. His world had frozen in 1944 for him. The enemy still lurked in every shadow for him. The war never ended. How could any man live this way? And if he was not mad, then what force kept him fighting alone, forgotten for 29 brutal years? Hiroo Onoda was born in 1922 in Kainan, Wakayama, a small mountain village in Japan that dreamed not of peace but of conquest. Its army was its pride, its emperor was its god, and its soldiers were raised not to live but to sacrifice everything without question for the empire. When a Japanese child took his first steps, he was not taught how to walk, he was taught how to die for his nation without question. Surrender did not exist in their world. Death was honorable, defeat was disgrace. Loyalty meant following every order as though it came from God himself above. Onoda grew up inside this iron world, obedient, focused, and completely devoted to a system that valued the empire above every single human life, including his own. In 1944, World War II was in its final brutal phase. Allied forces were closing in on Japan from every direction. Defeat was becoming unavoidable. In a last desperate move, Japan's high command decided to create guerrilla fighters, soldiers who would destroy the enemy silently from deep inside their own territory. Onoda was selected for the Nakano Military School in Tokyo, Japan's most secretive intelligence academy. Nobody outside its walls spoke of what happened inside it. Here, Onoda learned intelligence, espionage, and the science of surviving completely alone in enemy territory, without supplies, without contact, without any hope of rescue coming. For him, he was trained to burn enemy supply depots, exhaust armies through invisible attacks, and vanish back into the jungle before the enemy could even raise their weapons. When training ended, his commander, Major Taniguchi, looked Onoda in both eyes and gave him the order that would define the next 30 years of his entire life. Under no circumstances are you to surrender.
Suicide is not permitted either.
Suicide is not permitted either. 2 commands, 12 words. They would become Onoda's prison for 30 years of his life. Whether it takes 3 years or 5, we will return for you. Until then, do not let the enemy rest not for a single moment. These words lit a fire inside Onoda that would not be extinguished. For 29 years, he believed every single word without a shadow of doubt in him. Onoda was deployed to Lubang Island in the Philippines' small jungle, covered and strategically vital for disrupting American and Allied supply lines running through the Pacific war zone. His mission: watch, destroy supply lines, hit, and vanish, turn every inch of that Lubang jungle into a slow and invisible nightmare for every Allied soldier near it. He was to hold his position until Japan returned for him. 5 years, 10 years. He would wait, he would fight, he would not leave this island. Barely a year had passed when in August 1945, the world witnessed something it had never seen before. The annihilating power of the atomic bomb dropped on Japan. Japan surrendered unconditionally. World War II was officially over. On a battleship in Tokyo Bay, history signed its name, and the world finally exhaled for the first time in years. But there was no one to tell Hiroo Onoda on Lubang Island. He was still crouching in that same dark jungle, still watching, still waiting, still fighting a finished war. He was still there with his 3 companions, Akatsu Shimada and Kozuka, 4 men moving through Lubang Island's jungle like ghosts the world had already buried and forgotten. Allied forces dropped millions of leaflets over Lubang Island. Japan has surrendered. The war is over. Come down from the mountains. You are free. Come home now. Onoda read the leaflets, and was immediately certain this was an elaborate enemy trap. He had been trained for this moment. The enemy would always lie, always. Family photographs were dropped from the sky. His brother's voice was broadcast through military loudspeakers deep into the jungle. Onoda heard it all, and still did not move one. He had been taught that the enemy was cunning, that they would use false news photographs, even family voices, every trick to make him lower his weapon and surrender. Only one thought refused to die inside him, until my commanding officer himself returns and gives me the order. My war does not end, not ever. And so began a test of endurance that pushed every limit a human body can bear alone, forgotten, and completely sealed off from a world that had moved on forever. Raw bananas, coconuts, rice stolen from farms at night. When hunger peaked, Onoda hunted cows in the jungle and dried their meat in the sun to survive for months. Believing local police and villagers to be enemy collaborators, Onoda attacked them repeatedly in the dark of night without warning. The island lived in permanent fear of his shadow. Over 29 years, Onoda and his companions killed more than 30 locals and wounded over 100, an entire island shadowed by one man's unfinished, invisible, unstoppable war. Akatsu, his first companion, surrendered to Philippine authorities in 1949. He walked out of that jungle alone, blinking into a world that had already moved on without him. Shimada was killed in a confrontation with Philippine police. In 1954, another face gone. The jungle grew larger and quieter around Onoda with every man he lost inside it. With the death of his last companion, Kozuka, in 1972, Hiroo Onoda was left completely, totally alone inside that vast jungle, the last one standing, the only one remaining. Thousands of soldiers searched that same jungle for years. Every search mission failed. Every attempt to capture him failed. Onoda had become a legend. No army could find him. Then a 24-year-old Japanese adventurer named Norio Suzuki decided to find Onoda, not with weapons, not with an army, but completely alone with nothing but his own courage. Norio had 3 goals in life: to see a panda, to find the Yeti, and to track down Hiroo Onoda. He was no soldier, just a dreamer. He walked into the Lubang jungle alone, and in just 4 days, where armies had failed for 30 years, Norio found Hiroo Onoda standing in the trees. February 20, 1974, Onoda raised his weapon, but Norio called out in Japanese, "Onoda, Japan and the Emperor are worried about you. Please listen to me now." Onoda lowered the rifle slowly. He listened. But he made one thing clear: "I will not stand down until my commanding officer himself comes here and gives me the order." Norio understood what no army ever had. This war would only end with one word from one man, the same man who had given the original order 30 years ago. The problem was that Major Taniguchi, the commander who gave Onoda his order 30 years ago, had completely vanished after the war. Nobody knew where he had gone. After extensive searching, the government found him. Major Taniguchi, who had once commanded guerrilla soldiers, was now quietly and humbly running a small bookshop somewhere in Japan. A special mission was planned. Major Taniguchi was flown to the Philippines, sent back to that same jungle to undo the chains he himself had locked 30 years earlier. A special mission was planned. Major Taniguchi was flown to the Philippines, sent back to that same jungle to undo the chains he himself had locked 30 years earlier. Taniguchi took out a folded paper and began to read aloud slowly, clearly, every word carrying the weight of 30 years and thousands of wasted days inside that jungle. "Officer Onoda, Japan has lost. Your mission is completely over. Surrender your sword and rifle to the enemy. Your duty here is done. Stand down. It is finished." Onoda placed his rifle on the jungle floor. His sword followed. He stood upright, and for the first time in 30 years, his eyes filled slowly with tears. He had entered Lubang at 22 years old. He walked out at 52, 30 years, consumed by a jungle, a war, and an order only 12 words long. When Onoda returned to Japan, crowds called him a national hero.
me, please!
But the Japan he had left no longer existed. He could not adjust. He could not stay long. He could not find his place in the new Japan. The following year, he quietly left and moved to Brazil, where life still felt familiar, and the pace was slower. In 1996, Onoda returned to Lubang Island, the same jungle where his youth had been spent. He donated $10,000 and built a scholarship fund for local children. On January 16, 2014, in Tokyo, at the age of 91, Hiroo Onoda's heart gave out. The last soldier of World War II was gone. The longest war was over. He won the war, but he lost the battle against time. The last prisoner of a war the entire world had long forgotten. He never even knew it was over.